It looks like Ja'Marr Chase is officially back, as is Breece Hall, who had his breakout game today, and DJ Moore went completely bananas. Let's start with Ja'Marr Chase. Ja'Marr Chase had 52 points in fantasy football. That's going to be 19 targets, 15 receptions, 192 yards, and 3 touchdowns. It's no wonder the Bengals looked better today because they actually started throwing the ball to Ja'Marr Chase. It's interesting what happens when you do that. But he looked fantastic today. It's now evident why we're drafting him as high as the 102, pretty much consensus 102 actually, and now he's making that known. Now he's living up to that hype, and we're excited to see that from Ja'Marr Chase.
Yeah. And DJ Moore, talk about another guy that had a huge game to, not today, but a few days ago on Thursday night with 49 points. He was like the one sit this week that we got very wrong. So, of course,
that's what we heard about.
That was the one we heard about, even though we were right about the other 7. But 49 points, 10 of Justin Fields' 29 targets. Do that math. It's over 30% target share. Got to start him with this volume. I mean, if you look at the last few games that he's done pretty well on, granted, the games before he was getting garbage time points, but like 27 points and 9 targets, 10 targets, a ton of volume there, which we never expected on a consistent basis that he would get. And honestly, after these next few games, I'm still going to have some questions for the rest of the season, but he is an absolute must start every single week with friendly matchups to come against Minnesota's secondary, Vegas's secondary, and the Chargers secondary. You can count on him doing pretty well.
We told you that Breece Hall was going to break out this week, and he did. He's playing one of the worst defenses in the last 15 years in the NFL. He had 22 carries for 177 yards and a touchdown. He also had 3 receptions for 17 yards to go on top of that. So an extra 5 points to total up to 28 points for Breece Hall. Again, he was such a buy. He was a clear start this week, and now the buy window is probably closed. Breece Hall, he was not on a snap count for the first time all season today, and he looked fantastic. We're really excited about Breece Hall. We hope you drafted some of them. We hope you traded for him in your leagues too.
Yeah, another guy that had a really good game against the Bears secondary was Curtis Samuel on Thursday night. He's had now 2 straight 18-point games. You got to consider him at this point to be a potential flex option in your deeper formats if Howell keeps providing this much volume, and I would honestly count on that. I think Brian Robinson started really strong. He's started to not do as well, and there's just too many question marks offensively with that offensive line. I mean, Howell's been sacked, I think, almost more than anyone in the league, and that is due to the offensive line. So he's trying to get rid of the ball as fast as he can. They can't do anything in the run game. Curtis Samuel's been reaping the benefits of that the last 2 weeks. And Logan Thomas, 20 points this week. I mean, he's a waiver pickup that we'll be talking about later in this video as well, but he had a great performance. Look for him to get some nice volume in the future if Howell keeps this up.
Travis Etienne looked fantastic. It was about time Travis Etienne had one of these games, and today was it. In London. Again, I don't know why we're playing American football in England, but whatever. 26 carries for 136 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also had a 2-point conversion. He had 4 receptions for 48 yards. So not only do you see the receiving upside that we've tabbed Travis Etienne with since he came into the NFL, now he's producing on the ground too. He was extremely efficient. He had a couple breakaway runs. He looked fantastic. Tank Bigsby had 3 carries for 8 yards. So he was pretty much a non-factor in that game. So we're really excited about Etienne, and it's staying in the game. The receivers actually look good for the Jaguars as well.
Yeah, Calvin Ridley scored 20 points off of 8 targets and 7 receptions for 122 yards. So it was nice to see him put up some real nice production without scoring touchdowns. And Christian Kirk, same thing with this guy. He's so reliable. He has such a nice floor as a slot receiver. 8 targets, 6 receptions, 78 yards for 14 points. So nice to see both of those guys produce in the same offense. I think the buy window for Calvin Ridley has closed. We were recommending that you go and target him in your leagues because a lot of people were freaking out about him. He may still be more inconsistent in the future, but he's not going to be as cheap as he was before this game.
Yeah, for sure. Gabe Davis actually scored another touchdown this week, so therefore, Gabe Davis had another good week. He had 22 points. He had 6 receptions this time, and he had 8 targets. So this was good volume for Gabe Davis, somebody who I think we had as a start on our last video. 100 yards and a touchdown. Gabe Davis looked pretty freaking good this week, but it does not affect Stephon Diggs, who also had 24 points. He had 11 targets, brought in 8 of those for 121 yards and a touchdown. So what you're seeing is as that Bills offense starts to get better, they're going to be able to give it to both of those receivers and let them both both produce. Obviously, Gabe Davis is going to be a little bit more hit and miss. But that said, Gabe Davis now, I mean, you're looking at his game log. He has had multiple good games this season, 22, 15, 10, 21, and his low was 5. So, I mean, for Gabe Davis.
That was a non-touchdown week.
I know, the 1 week he didn't score a touchdown. So now 4 straight games with a touchdown. Let's see if he gets it to 5 next week.
Yeah, and George Pickens had a great day against Baltimore. They pull the upset there against the Ravens, who are clear. I mean, they're just the better team, but this is a rivalry game. So it's going to be a rock fight, going to be hard to predict who wins that game, and Pittsburgh ends up pulling out at the end. And it's thanks to George Pickens' big play at the end of the game. He has 10 targets for 6 receptions, 130 yards, and 1 touchdown. And honestly, with this guy, I think he's a guy that you're comfortable with in your flex if you have to put him in there, hoping that he can have a big game. But keep in mind, Pittsburgh's going into a bye in week 6, and after that, Deontay Johnson will probably be back healthy. There may be some targets that are taken away from Pickens again that go back to Deontay Johnson. It's kind of wait and see with Pickens, but a good sign from him today.
2 weeks of football for Alvin Kamara and 2 running back 1 finishes. Last week, he had 21 points. He was the RB9. This week, with a couple more games left to be played, he is the RB6, though, with 18, almost 19 points. So Alvin Kamara coming back and doing what we thought he would do. He's getting more attempts than we thought, too. He had 22 rushing attempts for 80 yards today. So not super efficient, but you added the touchdown, and that's definitely going to help him. He did not have 14 targets this week. He had 3, but he brought all 3 in for an extra 17 yards. So, you add 5 points on top of what he had on the ground, and he had 18, 19 points. It's a pretty good look for Alvin Kamara. Kendre Miller actually produced today, too, which was fairly surprising to me. But Kendre had 12 carries of his own for 37 yards. Didn't really do much there. But what Kendre did do is he had 4 receptions for 53 yards. So when you're looking at Kendre Miller's production, I mean, being able to get some of that passing work, even with Alvin Kamara in the lineup, I think that means that Kendre Miller could have a role there coming out this season. I think we should do a video on rookies this week. I think we maybe should include Kendre Miller because if he can carve out a role with Alvin Kamara there and even potentially with Jamal Williams coming back, that would be big for people who are stashing Kendre Miller.
Yeah, absolutely. But one running back on the other side of the ball in this game for New England, and Rhamondre Stevenson, it is not looking bright for him for the future. We're really worried about his fantasy upside in general. Only 2.4 points. And granted, this was a shutout game where New England's offense has never looked worse than it has now. But the biggest concern for me is the fact that Zeke Elliott goes out there. He has the same amount of carries as Rhamondre and out-targets Rhamondre as well with 4 targets, 4 receptions for 17 yards. Neither of them are pretty starts. Neither of them are guys that you're excited about putting in your lineup any given week. But this just kind of goes to our point of Bill Belichick running back committees.
Yep.
And this is just how it is. It's unfortunate. It sucks. Rhamondre, there could be an argument that Rhamondre is a buy because he's never been valued as low as he will be after this game. But man, I don't think there's any scenario where you're really optimistic about Rhamondre's fantasy upside, his ceiling, and that's how you win fantasy championships.
Moving over to those Miami Dolphins, you saw both Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert produce this week. That's going to be good for owners of both players. Devon Achane, again, looked really freaking good. 11 carries for 151 yards and a touchdown. Obviously had that breakaway run. He had 21.5 fantasy points today. That is great. He had 1 reception for 14 yards. And Raheem Mostert, I know, man.
With that volume,
I know.
too. It's
He's ridiculous.
Unreal.
It is fun to be wrong about him. I'm going to say that because he's freaking awesome.
He's electric.
Raheem Mostert, 10 carries for 65 yards and also got a touchdown. He also had 2 receptions for 13 yards. So we're happy that both of them were able to produce. It means if you started either of them, you got production. Will that happen every week? Probably not. And that's kind of what makes them a hard but easy start in terms of Achane, especially because you can't guess which one of them is going to produce on any given week. Sometimes they're both going to produce. I guarantee there are going to be weeks where Achane has down weeks and Mostert both have down weeks. Yeah. But Tyreek Hill staying in that game also pretty much just did what Tyreek Hill does. He had 8 receptions, 181 yards, and a touchdown. So Tyreek Hill, 32 fantasy points. That's what you drafted him for. He continues to be ridiculous. He had 22 mile per hour on one of his runs today. He's ridiculous, but. Yeah. Happy to see that from Tyreek Hill.
Another unprecedented, ridiculous performance that happened this Sunday was Zach Moss putting up 33 points against the Tennessee Titans run defense. Now, granted, they had a significant injury on the defensive line, but holy crap, with Jonathan Taylor coming back, and yes, Taylor was on a snap count. He only had 6 carries for 18 yards. Moss goes out there, gets 23 carries, 165 yards for 2 touchdowns. Oh, and 2 receptions for 30 yards on top of that. We were strongly discouraging people to start Zach Moss this week. I hope you didn't listen to us because we were
right.
Dead wrong. I was forced to start him in a couple leagues. Worked out for me. I'm not complaining, but we were saying Zach Moss is not rosterable. I think for the next few games at least, you gotta while JT's kind of building up his opportunity, you got to consider starting Zach Moss.
I think I 100% agree with you. And JT will work his way back into that workhorse role.
He will.
But, and people are saying this might be a committee. Well, yeah, it was always going to be at least somewhat of a committee.
But they paid Taylor $13 million.
And so he's going to be the guy there. And Tyjae Spears, I want you to answer this in the comments. Is Tyjae Spears the best running back in Tennessee, or is this an overreaction? Because I see a lot of people asking this question on Twitter. And when you're looking at the Two's production, Tyjae Spears had 7 carries for 34 yards and a touchdown. He also had 4 receptions for 35 yards. So from a fantasy perspective, I mean, you're looking at Derrick Henry as well. He had 13 carries for 43 yards, so not super efficient there. He had 3 receptions for 19 yards. So Tyjae outscored him 17-9. I mean, again, I do want to know, number one, Tyjae, I think, is passing the eye test more than people thought he would, especially compared to Henry. So I want to know what you guys think about Tyjae versus Henry in the comments, because there are a lot of people that are asking some really good questions on this one.
DeAndre Hopkins produced just like we expected. Guys, we are telling you, and we'll tell you this every single week, I don't care how untalented the lead wide receiver on the team that's playing against the Colts secondary is, whatever week they're playing the Colts, you have to start them. DeAndre Hopkins has done very little going into this game. He went out of his mind, 22 points. Josh Downs, another guy that we really liked this offseason, thought that he could get more volume than people expected. 15 points, outproduced Michael Pittman this week as well, and this was with Gardner Minshew in the game. So a nice fantasy performance for both of these wide receivers on both ends of the ball. I think you got to be looking up for Josh Downs and probably coming back to earth with DeAndre Hopkins playing more respectable secondaries than the Colts.
Yeah. The Lions offense continues to be completely lethal for fantasy. We said Jared Goff was a must start this week. Jared Goff, 27 points this week. David Montgomery, we also said, was a must start. At this point, he's not going on that video anymore because he's a must start every single week. David Montgomery with 21 points today. Josh Reynolds, another guy that we were in our live streams being like, maybe you start Josh Reynolds. Yep. He was a good start today. It's 76 yards and a touchdown. He had 17.5 points. Sam LaPorta. I mean, what else is there to even freaking say about Sam LaPorta? What else is there to say? He had 3 receptions for 47 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Maybe
today.
A top 4 dynasty tight end at this point. I definitely value him over Kyle Pitts. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Let's give Adam Thielen some respect. We got to do it. Through the first 5 weeks, you can kind of throw week 1 out the door. 3 points. After that, he puts up 20, 31, 15 in this last week. 27 points with 2, 9, 14, 8, and 13 targets. The volume is ridiculous.
It is.
This was an incredibly ballsy prediction that we had in the offseason saying that Thielen would be the primary target and get significant volume from Bryce Young. It's looking good through the first 5 weeks of the year. We're not going to take any victory laps yet, but here's what we do know. You have to be starting Adam Thielen every single week.
Oh, yes, you do. I'm looking at my best ball shares right now. Adam Thielen is my 3rd most drafted wide receiver with 28%. Yeah. So I'm feeling pretty good about that one right now, not going to lie. I'm getting pretty close to victory lapping on that one. He's looked great. Yep. Drake London actually is starting to get respectable volume. And again, we had Drake London last week as a buy because we said, okay, if Taylor Heineke comes in and actually starts instead of Desmond Ridder, then we think Drake London could be serviceable. Actually, Drake London is serviceable now. Yeah. Don't forget he's a very, very good wide receiver. And actually, Desmond Ridder, looking at him today, 26 fantasy points. He had 28 completions for 330 yards and a touchdown. He also had 4 carries for 10 yards and a touchdown as well. But Drake London, 15 points. He had 6 of 9 receptions. Nice. For 78 yards. So Drake London looks good today. Also serviceable today. Kyle Pitts.
There you go.
That's just what happens when you actually pass the ball a little bit and you play one of the worst defenses in the NFL. Yeah. But, 7 receptions for Kyle Pitts today, 87 yards. He had 15.5 fantasy points. If there's a quarterback change, this is what we would expect to be more of the norm because this is what they're capable of every week. But it was nice to see that this week. I'm not sure anybody started them this week. But again, nice to see it. Maybe we do start getting some more consistent passing volume from the Falcons. Yeah.
Another tight end that had an unexpected performance this week was Dalton Schultz. He outproduced all Houston wide receivers this week by quite a significant margin. Like, who saw this coming? Honestly, this may be a guessing game that we have to play all year. It's like pick your poison or pick your. If you're lucky, maybe it'll be Tank Dell, maybe it'll be Nico, maybe it'll be Robert Woods, maybe eventually it'll be John Mechie, Dalton Schultz. Who knows? We have no idea. At this point, I'm scared. I'm not comfortable When I'm putting a Texans receiver in my starting lineup any given week, I am optimistic that they can have a good week, but I'm worried that they could lay a dud. Because Nico Collins and Tank Dell both did that this week.
So I was watching the Bengals game, and I asked myself this really important: who the heck is Trentin Irwin? So I guess T. Higgins goes out, and this guy steps in and is immediately just as good as T. Higgins. He's 27. Yeah. Where has he even played at? Oh, he's been in Cincinnati his whole career.
4 years.
No, I'm not going to lie, guys. Never heard of this guy. 8 of 10 receptions today for 60 yards. He had 14 fantasy points. So will he be a top 3 type 3-round dynasty pick because of this performance?
Yeah.
Yet to be seen. But we learned who Trentin Irwin was today. So good game by him.
Yeah. Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp can produce together.
And they will.
They will, and they can. They already showed
and they might.
that they are able to.
And they must.
This game was so much fun to watch from a fantasy perspective. A bummer that the Rams couldn't pull off an upset. But Puka Nacua, 20 points, 11 targets, 7 receptions, 71 yards, and a touchdown. Cooper Kupp, 12 targets, 8 receptions, and 118 yards. I think if anyone watched this game, they knew that Cooper Kupp was absolutely the guy. He was the primary guy. And I think no one in their right mind was going into this game, going into the rest of the season, saying that Puka was really going to be a more significant option than Cooper Kupp. That was never the argument. The argument was, can these guys produce at the same time together? Can they help each other? Heck yeah, they can.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Jaleel McLaughlin actually looked legit today. He was really fun to watch. Yeah. I didn't know how fast he
looked like a little baby Devon Achane.
I know he did, dude. He's a rookie, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is going to be an interesting one to watch.
He was undrafted.
9 carries for 68 yards today. He also had 3 receptions for 21 yards and a touchdown. So Jaleel McLaughlin looked really good again today. He had 18 fantasy points. So if you added him off of waivers last week, might be a guy you wanted to hang on to. But we're going to talk about him again this week because he's not actually rostered in that many leagues. That's going to prompt something from us. But again, Jaleel McLaughlin this week, he looked freaking good again.
The dude is 5'7", 187 pounds.
Dude, the size, like things that are going on with Tank Dell and Achane.
Like, I think it's irrelevant at this point.
I'm starting to think it is. Like, what?
Yeah.
You live and learn.
Yeah. A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert both go off this week at the expense of Devonta Smith, who has now had 2 pretty rough weeks in a row. But, man, welcome back to the land of the living, Mr. Dallas Goedert. I mean, talk about an explosion and making up for a horrible first 4 weeks of the season. This guy, he proved again that he's just such a good tight end and has so much upside as a fantasy option. Like, I was starting to worry about him for the rest of the season. I was saying that you can't start him until he shows that he can put up respectable fantasy performances again. Well, yeah, put him back in your lineup, please. Please do it. Because they figured something out. They're like, hey, let's actually use our tight end.
And knowing the tight end landscape right now, he'd probably be the RB or the tight end 3 after this game.
Right after that game.
Yeah, just a 30-point game. That's all it takes.
Yeah.
Jordan Addison, as predicted.
Yeah.
Another huge game for him. He looks freaking good as a rookie. Again, this was a guy that we always thought would come in and produce as a rookie, but actually he's even surprising me a little bit. Jordan Addison today had 6 of 9 receptions. Nice. 64 yards and a touchdown. He had 18.5 fantasy points. He was a great start today. And you're looking at a week where Justin Jefferson only had 5.8 points. That's worth mentioning as well. Justin Jefferson, honestly, the Chiefs played freaking good defense against him today. They did straight up double teaming him. I think it was working.
I think we got to give the Chiefs defense their respect.
I think we do. Yeah, and if the Chiefs are good at defense, like just forget about playing the league. Like, I mean, it's just they're gonna win the Super Bowl.
Give them the Super Bowl already.
3 receptions for 28 yards for Jefferson today. But again, Jordan Addison looked very good. He's a guy that you definitely should be keeping on your rosters. And actually, pretty much, I mean, again, he's a good start. Probably not every week yet, but most weeks he's going to be a good start at this point. I didn't start him in a league this week, and I wish I would have. But he had another big day for the Vikings. Yeah. That's going to be the headlines. Let's move down to the injury report, and let's talk about some injuries. First of all, moment of silence for Anthony Richardson. I can't tell you how much this one stings.
The fear is an AC joint sprain, which is, thank goodness. I'm not gonna stop not breathing yet because I still think it could be worse. X-rays were negative. It's a right shoulder injury, his throwing shoulder. Honestly, I think he could sit out for a couple weeks because ultimately, what's the Colts' upside this year? Probably not very high.
I don't know. The last time the Colts had a quarterback and he kept getting hurt, it was that guy. I'm terrified.
I'm literally seeing ghosts. Every time he goes down, I'm like, are we going to do this again?
All right. change the subject.
Daniel Jones injures his neck. He
got a
did
neck.
not return from that game. And honestly, even if he was healthy, I didn't want him to return to that game. The Giants look like the second or third worst team in the NFL right now. It's not getting any better. Daniel Jones it's tough to even start him every week and feel very comfortable about it. But that's absolutely something you want to keep an eye on, because when Daniel Jones isn't playing, that does hurt the other fantasy assets in that offense, as few of them as there are, because Darren Waller is not one of those. James Conner injures his knee as well. I do not believe he returned from the game either. That's something you're really going to want to keep an eye on, because he's had a great start to the season, done exactly what we expected him to, barring injury, and, well, the injury is here now. So we got to see how long-lasting this will be for him, but there may be some running backs in that offense that you want to look to in waivers if he's out for a significant amount of time.
Can you do a good Daniel Jones face? He's always like... It looks like he always looks like he's
I was going to start
terrified.
like foaming at the mouth and drooling like he did that one time.
All right.
I mean, I don't blame him, because he gets murdered every play.
You remember when Nick Foles was like seizing on the ground last year? Roschon Johnson has a concussion. Not a guy we're dropping. So we do think, I mean, obviously he's going to go through concussion protocol, but it could be more serious there. Khalil Herbert, they said he's going to be out a couple weeks, I think, with his ankle injury. Yep. So that's going to open the door for Roschon when he comes back. That Bears backfield is going to be interesting, though. Yep. And then rounding it out, again, Justin Jefferson, hamstring injury. We do... not know much about Justin Jefferson right now, because that game just ended, and we're going to find out more. Hoping it's not too bad, but it was kind of non-contact, and it was kind of meh. So I'm glad it's a hamstring and not an ACL, though.
Yep.
All right, let's get to our waiver section of the video today. Our first one's going to be Logan Thomas. If you've been paying attention to the Washington Commanders, you know that Logan Thomas has had a couple of good games recently. In this game that he played on Thursday night, he had 9 of 11 receptions for 77 yards and a touchdown. He had 20 fantasy points. And looking on the year, he's the tight end 7. Okay. Looking at his game log, he's also had a game of 10 points and 8 and 7. So if his floor is 7 points, we're absolutely taking that. But you've seen 2 games now where he's been above 8 targets. Eric Bieniemy is his offensive coordinator. Eric Bieniemy used to having a Travis Kelce. Logan Thomas, not quite Travis Kelce. But you are seeing him get quite a few targets from Sam Howell as Sam Howell gets more comfortable in that offense. So he could be somebody that, again, you're talking about a guy that's producing as a top 10 tight end right now. That's something you're going to want to take advantage of, because tight end is a crapshoot. At this point, if you don't have Hawk or LaPorta or Kelce, you're probably streaming tight end. So guys like Logan Thomas are going to be great. I think Logan Thomas is a good option here for a waiver this week. Probably not my highest priority, but again, somebody you could be looking for if you need tight end help.
Yep, and Josh Downs is going to be the next guy we have here. He's been in and out of rosters, on and off, starting lineups here and there. He's kind of that last option on your bench where if you have to start him because of injuries and buys, you can. And if you want to pick up other guys that are better off waivers, you choose to drop him. Well, he's getting really good volume, man. I think he really should be rostered more often than not. Definitely more roster ownership than he is currently right now. I mean, the volume he's getting and the targets downfield that he's getting, like the big playability he has with his speed, elusiveness. He's a great route runner, good hands, better than the other second-round pick they had last year, Alec Pierce. So excited to see what he can do in the future. And honestly, Minshew is not a downgrade from a fantasy perspective when it comes to supporting all those other assets in that offense if Anthony Richardson is out for a significant amount of time.
Josh Downs, my most rostered player in underdog best ball drafts this year. Feeling pretty good about it, honestly. Feeling pretty good. Jaleel McLaughlin, again, we're going to have him on this list because while, yes, we had him on this list last week, there were a lot of people that were going to be skeptical of him, and I think that's okay. However, again, he had 18 points this week, and he's only rostered in sleeper leagues in 51% of leagues. So this is the guy you can probably still get in some of your leagues. Yep. And there's going to be people in the comments be like, oh, my league, he was off the waivers 10 weeks ago. Like, yeah, whatever. Not everybody's in a genius league like you. So if you're in a league where Jaleel McLaughlin's available, you are adding. It is amazing when I get I'm like, what do you want me to say to that comment? We're talking to people who can get him.
Who have like one take.
But again, 9 carries for 68 yards today. He was very efficient and he had a touchdown. He looks pretty good. And if Javonte Williams misses time, he's going to be worth a waiver ad because actually he's a plug-in guy right now.
Yeah.
So.
We asked you the question earlier if Tyjae Spears is the better talent in the running back room in Tennessee. He may be. Potentially. It's worth a waiver ad at least. He looked pretty electric today against, granted, the Colts defense. So take every performance against the Colts with a grain of salt. But definitely a guy you want to keep an eye on. I mean, they're splitting time. They're splitting carries and opportunities. So you might want to grab him if you have the spot.
Roschon Johnson's another guy with 51% rostership on Sleeper. And with Roschon, like we said, Khalil Herbert's going to be out a few weeks. Roschon's in the concussion protocol. We think he'll get back before Khalil Herbert does. I wonder if when Roschon takes over that backfield, he won't give it back to Khalil Herbert. That's what I'm wondering. And honestly, he's looked very good in a limited sample size so far in his rookie season. So with Roschon Johnson, again, if you have him, we are holding him. We're stashing him if you can. And honestly, now I bet he could go on most people's IRs if you have him. So that's good too. But if you don't and he's on the waivers, you could pick him up and put him on your IR. It's going to be a perfect stash till he comes back and plays. When he does come back and play, he's probably going to be the workhorse guy there. So we are going to be comfortable putting a waiver in on Roschon this week.
Another guy that was absolutely a stash going into this Minnesota game was Rashee Rice, and we even had him, I believe, in our must-start video this week. And we hit on that. He got a touchdown just like we expected. We said, hey, this Minnesota defense is going to be very focused on Travis Kelce, very focused on the other weapons in that offense, and Rashee Rice could be the afterthought, and that'll be good for his opportunities in the red zone. Pays off. He gets a touchdown. Good for him. He's a guy that I think is just going to keep trending up as the season progresses, as he gets more opportunities, as he gets more volume, as he gets more experience in the NFL as a rookie. You're seeing these other rookie wide receivers produce in Josh Downs, Puka Nacua, Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers. The list goes on and on and on at wide receiver and running back. Rashee Rice, I think, is going to be able to get his own with Patrick Mahomes.
I think Rashee Rice is the wide receiver one there. I mean, outside of Kelce.
Yeah, I mean, that was our prediction going into this year.
He looks really good. Yeah. All right, we have a couple buys and a couple sells for you. Let's start with the buys. I'll do the buys. You can do the sells. The buys. We're going to start with Chris Olave. We predicted that this week Chris Olave would have a rough week and then that he would be a huge buy because he would have had 2 down weeks in a row. Chris Olave, he wasn't that bad today, but he only got 5 targets. He only had 2 catches. He had touchdowns, so he did kind of salvage his day with the touchdown. Yeah. He only had 9 points, though. I think there are going to be a lot of people that are looking at the same situation in Chris Olave and being like, yeah, I don't really need Chris Olave now. Yeah, you should buy Chris Olave, I think. I think Chris Olave the rest of the season is going to be fine. Obviously, Michael Thomas outproduced him by a point today, but Chris Olave, when you're looking at his targets over the first 3 games, 10, 11, and 11 targets. The last 2, where Derek Carr has been injured, 6 and 5. I think this is directly correlated with the health of their quarterback. I think their quarterback will get healthier as the season goes on. I think Chris Olave will also continue to produce at a high level like he did the first 3 weeks as the season goes on as well. So we like Chris Olave as a buy. Derrick Henry is going to be the next guy here. Derrick Henry is a guy that, again, there are a lot of people that think Tyjae Spears is the guy there. And I do see people who say, yeah, Derrick Henry might actually be on his way out. I mean, he might be on his way down. That's possible. I mean, when you're looking at Derrick Henry, he is 29 years old now. And he has gotten a lot of work over the years. But I think there are going to be a lot of people, again, that look at Derrick Henry and say, yeah, I think this guy's nothing because he's not doing anything for me. I drafted him in, the second round, and 9 points, 2 points in the last 3 weeks, had a game of 24 in there. So maybe people won't. But we are not going to preach to you like you play in professional leagues. We are going to talk to you guys like you play in home leagues and casual leagues, because that's the majority of people do. So again, don't hit the comments because we're trying to help everybody here. And if your Derrick Henry owner wants to sell him for cheap, you should inquire about that, and you should be adding Derrick Henry for cheap if you can. And then lastly, Rhamondre Stevenson. And this is one we had earlier in the season, and I didn't think his value would go lower. And my goodness, I bet people are getting close to dropping him, because he has been really, really, really bad when you're looking at his game log. He had 14 and 15 points in his first 2 weeks. Since then, 7, 6, and 3 points. I think there are going to be a lot of people that see the shutouts that the Patriots are pitching, that see Mac Jones not being able to perform as a quarterback, and that see Rhamondre with limited production and say, yeah, I want to sell Rhamondre, or I want to drop him. You might be able to get him for dirt cheap, and you might be able to take a gamble. Maybe they'll start Bailey Zappi. I don't know. That would help him, I think. But anybody but Mac, they got a lot of problems. But Rhamondre could be a potential buy low for us. Yeah. And heading over the sells here, we're just going to have a couple this week. I think DeAndre Hopkins is, at least for me, I haven't even talked to you about this, but we kind of alluded to this going into the Colts game. We said D-Hop is a must start this week, and right after he inevitably puts up 20-plus points, go sell him. See ya. Goodbye. It's not against DeAndre Hopkins' talent. He's obviously still very talented, but the situation he's in with the target, with the volume in general, is just not very great. I mean, Tannehill, the Colts always make Tannehill look like a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback. And then when he doesn't play them, he looks like buns. And even against the Colts, he threw a horrible interception at the end of the game to lose the game. Like they're still, and with Tyjae Spears' resurgence, or not resurgence, with Tyjae Spears showing out and Derrick Henry, I think they're going to continue to lean on the run game. And even though D-Hop is the one there, that's not really saying much. And his ceiling is going to be capped for the rest of the season. Last guy we're going to have here is Zach Moss. And yes, we were wrong about saying don't start Zach Moss this week. Obviously, he puts up 33 points. You can give us a big thumbs down, give us an L, whatever.
you're still selling Zach Moss.
Yes.
I don't think anyone is going to tell you that Zach Moss is more talented than Jonathan Taylor after the Colts literally just paid Jonathan Taylor $13 million a year over the next 3 seasons for him to stay in Indy and to do what he's been doing over the last 3 seasons.
Yeah.
So I think this is going to be a slow fade for Zach Moss where he just starts to get less and less opportunities, less and less volume, and there's a chance he could make the most out of that volume as it becomes less and less, kind of like a Nyheim Hines sort of guy. But at the end of the day, man, he's not going to have that ceiling or that upside for the rest of the season.
And I think everybody's well aware with the contract situation that JT's going to have that backfield. Yeah. So, yeah, we are selling Zach Moss. All right, that's going to wrap it up for this week. We'll have a waivers video out Monday morning, so make sure you keep an eye out for that. We're going to have all of our waiver ads in depth, or waiver avoids, I guess we also have in that video. So make sure you tune in for that. Do us a huge favor, make sure you drop a like on this video, and make sure you're subscribed if you play fantasy football. We're bringing you fantasy football content all week, every week, all season long. So we appreciate it if you subscribe. Flockfantasy.com/domain is where all of our exclusive content is. That includes our rankings, our articles, our Discord, and you can join a league with us as well into this season and next season. So like I said, flockfantasy.com/domain. We appreciate you guys watching. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you later.